This is Paul Nobles from eattoperform.com. I am sitting here with April Blackford. April, if you want to say hi to everyone.
Hi, everybody.
That way everybody knows that you're not like this little thumbnail. I never actually know what people see. It's been a long while since I've looked back to see what
They
the...
actually they actually only see whenever there's only two people doing the webinar. Whoever's talking is who the camera's on, and you cannot see the other person. Whenever there are three
Last week,
people, when there's three people doing the webinar, you can actually see the thumbnails of the other two people.
last week, I actually had to hold down the, like, when you were talking, it would put me forward for some reason, and so I had to kind of control it. But anyway, so we already do have a question. I've already let everybody know to kind of get the questions in as soon as possible. We've been running a little bit late the last few weeks, and so I kind of want to try and keep this to about an hour. And so we're going to get rolling here. We actually have a question. And it's from Whitney, and Whitney says she just read through the ETP manuals, and I'm confused on the calculator. I put in all my info and put my fat at 75, which is probably a pretty good place to start for her. It said I should be having 2,500 calories a day. Just wanted someone to go make sure this is correct. 29 years old, 5'7", 128. I do CrossFit 2 times a day, 5 times a week. So we do have that information for you, Whitney, but what I'm interested in is what are your goals, because my suspicion is that I have an idea of what your goals are, and the way you're going about it is not necessarily what we would suggest, unless, of course, there's something that I'm not aware of that you may be training for or something of that nature, and so you have to get in a lot of volume. But April, what April actually ran the calculations for you, and what did you end up coming up with, April?
She obviously calculated it at extremely active, which would be 2591, and
Yep.
that would put her at 128 grams of protein, 75 grams of fat, and 351 grams of carbs.
I actually like that. Um, I don't know where she came from, so she might not want to dive into that immediately. But you know, I actually don't hate that. What she could do, though, is if she thinks that that's, an extreme amount of carbs. I don't think it is if you're working out twice a day. Um, but if she thinks that it's an extreme amount of carbs, then I might recommend going up to 100 grams of fat, which would probably put her somewhere around 250, which, a lot of people think that's a lot. The reality is it's actually not all that much. Um, and so, Whitney actually hasn't responded to what I said, and so we'll just kind of wait for her to respond. But I'm interested to know um, why she's doing two-a-days, because she's 5'7". Um, I don't know if her goal is to get better, or if she's trying to burn fat, as an example, or if she's trying to get leaner. I mean, I guess everybody's trying to get leaner, right? That's sort of what we do. Um, but both April and I, our initial reaction was that for 5'7", that 128 is probably kind of slight. Um, and usually you'll see athletes that size that are kind of in that 150 to 160 range, usually with good muscle, 17 to 20% body fat in those scenarios. Okay, so she is responding back to me. I read ETP so I could perform better. I don't feel like I'm eating enough. I work out twice a day because I have the time and I just really enjoy it. Um, yeah, I can appreciate that, but I would be interested to know what your goals are. You almost certainly aren't eating enough, that's for sure, because your weight is really low. for the level of performance that you do. But I'm interested in what your goals are, because I think I can help you think of your workouts differently, still enjoy them as much, but maybe get a better response. So I'd be interested to know, are you trying to go to the CrossFit Games, or are you just trying to get leaner, or are you just are you a marathoner? I mean, what's the story? Because that is some context that is helpful, and that's interesting, because a lot of times people want to read the books and go, okay, well, I want to get a feel for what this eating to perform thing is about, and that's great, and I think the books are really helpful in that regard. But on the same note, there is some level of customization that sort of needs to happen, that will make a big difference for people. And so anything you can give me in specifics for that would be a good thing. What are your thoughts, April?
I think obviously with her stats, I think if she slowly worked up to gaining even to 140 pounds, she would be in a better state. I think that, she stated that she works out twice a day because she has the time and she enjoys it. You know, I think that she would probably gain more from her workouts if she, worked out 5 times a week, once a day,
Right.
rather than twice a day. Especially if she's not competing or anything like that, is my opinion. If she worked out just once a day and even, did a lifting and then a Metcon or whatever and just kind of put it all into one, I think she could classify as very active and drop her carbs down to around, her carbs will still be around 291, even with that.
She says her goal is to be lean and just to work out better. She's definitely not training for games. I'm not training for anything. Do you CrossFit is my question, or do you do typical um, resistance training? She said her second workout is usually a strength workout. She says, yes, I CrossFit. Okay, so here is my suggestion to you. So this is actually really super helpful. One, as anybody who's watched a fair number of these knows, I'm not a big fan of strength training and working out, or lifting weights in the same workout. And one of the reasons why I'm not is I think that whether naturally or unnaturally, you aren't 100% at either one, right? So a lot of times you will have a strength progression. I don't know what you're using for a strength progression. Is it something like Windler or something of that nature, or do you just go in and just lift weights kind of randomly, or is there some type of program to what you're doing? But what I would suggest to you is, if the goal is to be lean, um, and the goal is to get better at exercise, I would focus a little bit more on the resistance training side of things. And you could, as an example, well, she's saying that she wants to get better at working out, so I'm going to give you a formula of what that might look like, okay? Um, so on Mondays would be a squat day, and if you CrossFit for an hour and strength train for an hour, I'd much rather see you do something like squats on a Monday, and then uh, in terms of getting better at exercise, that's going to help. It would need to be a progressive system. We have one that was designed by Chad Wesley Smith. You can use that for actually anything, even though it says to squat. So you can go to Google and eatperform.com and then search the name Chad Smith, and that will give you the progressive system that I'm talking about. If you show that to your coaches, I'm sure they'll know how to apply that to your workouts. So let's say that you go the route that I'm going to suggest, right? So the suggestion that I would have for you would be to just squat on Mondays. And the reason why I would like you to just squat on Mondays and not do a finisher or a WOD or anything like that is because I want you 100% so you get better at squatting. And so, but I'd like to see that a good workout, um, and by that I mean, if you normally worked out 2 hours, let's just do 2 hours of squats. Let's do a program system, similar Windler or something of that nature. Those are all things that you could work with. Um, but then you would do like drop sets and some assistance work. Your coaches would be helpful with this. Um, an example would be, um, something like um, you would do your Windler set, then you would do a drop set at 60% of your 1 rep max, and so you do maybe 5 times 10, and then you would do um, another set at 40%, and you would do 10 reps 5 times. And so you have your super strength, then you have your kind of reps, and then you have your um, gosh, I'm losing my train of thought. But there's drop setting and then there's down setting. So the drop set would be 60%, the down set would be 40. Okay. So I don't know when your rest days are. So I'm going to assume that it would probably be like a Wednesday and then maybe a Sunday, or a Thursday and a Sunday. So I would have you WOD on Tuesday, and probably in the evening. Both of these would probably be in the evening. Um, if you're going to do some strength work, and I would have no problem with that, you could actually, if you felt like it, you could WOD that morning. The one thing that I would want you to do, though, and I'll explain it to you as we're walking through it, um, is I want you to be 100% for the lifting days and not really care all that much about the WOD, which is kind of anti-CrossFit, right? Um, the CrossFit, the mentality is, oh, I'll just kind of lay up on the lifts and then I'll try and RX the WOD. It's like, well, I don't think you really get all that great at that. I'll see opportunities for WODs that I'll RX, but in general, I'm always trying to lift heavier weight, and I think you'll see a better result doing it that way. Tuesday, you WOD. You could WOD in the morning if you wanted to, if you felt like it. If you wanted to do some type of strength work, I might suggest that you would do something like, some skill work and things of this nature. Maybe work on overhead squats or your squat clean form or some, Olympic lifting complexes. Nothing super, super heavy, but if you're going to lift weights, and you're going to be tempted to do like 2-a-days, I would do it more working on skills, double unders, muscle ups, all these types of progressions, rather than like, an all-out strength training program. So now we'll use a Wednesday as a rest day, but it'll work as an example, okay? What I would like to see you do, and your other rest day will be Sunday in this example, and the reason being is that I want you fresh for the squats on Monday. So Thursday will be a heavy day again, and so I want to see you do something like 2 hours really lifting, not wadding. When April was talking about 140, that may or may not scare you. It shouldn't scare you. Honestly, at your size, 140 is probably your ticket to being leaner than you are at 128, because you sort of get like this I hate to say this term, but it's like a skinny fat look where Um, your body's just kind of stressed out from all the working out and things of this nature. This would allow for some rest. Then your Thursday workout's going to be heavy. I might do deadlifts there, but if I'm you and I'm trying to get better at working out and maybe try to get better at CrossFit, I might actually try and do heavy Olympic lifting complexes on that day. Um, and so, once again, you're not doing any cardio on Thursday. Um, we'll come back on Friday. You know, you can WOD if you want to do a two a day. That's fine. I don't think that that's necessary. I think that that's actually probably harming some of your progress because your body is wanting to get better at exercise, but you're just kind of banging on it all the time. I would be interested to know if you're coming from kind of a lower way of eating. That would be helpful. If you are going to do some strength, maybe something like deadlifts at about 60% would make some sense. Usually Saturday I know is kind of a hellraiser day at most CrossFit gyms, so you're going to want to do whatever hero WOD or whatever partner WOD they program. Those days are kind of the more interesting days. So basically you got your squats on Monday. We are wanting to keep you at about 2,500 calories. I would say work up to that if you think you've been under eating. But honestly, if you're already doing 2 a days, if you're a pretty good athlete, you're young, I can truthfully say to you, you're the type of person that is able to get away with it more than other people are able to get away with it. And what I mean by that is, if you were, say, a 50-year-old woman, I would have you move into it a little bit slower. That's not going to be necessary in your situation. I'd be cautious. I would watch the scale. I would make sure that you're in touch with April in the science lab. But in general, you can probably get away with more than what you're pushing right now. Do you understand the basics of what I'm saying in terms of how I'm programming your days and why you should get your coaches involved? And the reason why I'm asking you this is because someone is blowing me up, and maybe it's April. Nope, it's not April.
Oh, me.
Let me, okay, so let me just close out. Sorry about that. Okay. So April, do you have any thoughts on what I'm saying or any opinions?
I actually like the plan. I actually like the plan. I think if she structured it down, like you're saying, where she focused specifically on lifting, like two real good hard workouts twice a week, and then did some other shorter metcons and some skill work and so forth, and then the longer WOD on Saturdays. I think she'd make great progress with that. Training twice a day for 5 days a week. She never gives her body any time to really recover other than the 2 rest days. And that's when your muscles grow. That's when they're that's when they're regenerating and breaking down and building back up, is when you're resting, when you're sleeping, when you're constantly working out like that.
Right.
It's basically counterproductive to your goals.
And just so you know, April and I also love working out, but we like working out at 100%. To be completely honest with you, what you're describing to me, we work with, top athletes. I have discussions with Olympians that, would struggle maybe with that volume, maybe not struggle with that volume Olympians, but, like a lot of the CrossFit Games athletes, that's actually a lot of volume for those type of people. I mean, sometimes they do that volume, but that is not a regular occurrence. They are more inclined to do like the 2 or 3 hour approach where they're going at it 100%. And so I think you're probably at 60% a lot, and this would get you closer to 100%. And but the goal as always is shoot, I lost the, okay, there we go. But the goal as always is to get better, and you have to get progressively stronger to get better.
And I actually prefer the method of, like what you said, some of the competitors doing, 2-hour workouts versus multiple
Yeah,
workouts that are broken up throughout the day.
yeah, and having intra-workout carbs,
Exactly.
while you're doing that, that tends to make a difference as well. So we covered that one in depth. If you have any other, um, okay, she did have two follow-ups. I'm gonna finish up with that real quick, and then um, we'll move on. Let's see. She says she eats paleo. Don't know how many calories I'm eating. I just am super hungry all the time and wondering what else I should be eating. Um, well, usually the biggest additions for somebody in your situation that's working out a lot is going to be some level of drinkable carbohydrate and some level of protein to make sure that you're getting adequate protein. Sounds like you're pretty new to the whole idea. I think for you, is to kind of hear what we're saying, but also just get in the forums and then touch base with April one-on-one. And she is saying that this is making sense. Um, in terms of like carbohydrate sources, white rice, more potatoes, things of that nature, that will help your energy. If you're eating paleo, you're eating mostly salads and meats and things of this nature, you're probably unintentionally under eating. And so as you start to track, I think what you'll see is, or you're eating a high amount of fat, which is probably going to kind of keep that recovery not as optimal as we would like it. And so there. I hope that's helpful. And once again, this is for everybody out there. This is just a jumping off point. This is something that we're going to, um, be offering up, and then you use the forums to kind of tweak it as you go, and you find out what works. You ask other people's opinion, and that's kind of the process. So Janelle Pica was asking, let's see, questions on fats here. ETP does a lower fat sort of diet to help aid with performance. Women normally get a 75 to 100 grams. I just would like to point out that that's not low fat. That's actually, most diets would consider that pretty high fat, but I get it. If you're normally eating paleo or primal, that is low to you, but in general, that would be um, most people would consider that a lot of fat. Men around 100 to 125 grams for the recommendation of Metflex. My question is, what level of fat is too low? Um, my thoughts are under 50 grams. I would not want people to consistently do that. I think you can get away with it from time to time. As an example, today I'm eating relatively lean, um, but I don't do that very often. I don't know if anybody's following my Instagram at Eat to Perform, but I am kind of doing the team challenge along with the group and kind of showing, how to eat flexibly, and then also, uh, you know, get real results, and the goal being 1 pound a week. Though actually, this week might be difficult because it was date weekend and the state fair all at the same time. So it's going to be a challenge for me to get my 1 pound this week, but I'm hoping for it. So um, she's saying that she came from a higher fat, low carb background, but have noticed incredible body composition change by flipping the two. What gives? What's up with fat really? And what really is too low in terms of fat intake? Um, well, I'm going to give my opinion, and then April can give her opinion. But I think the whole fat thing, it's an interesting question that you have to kind of dissect a lot of ways, right? One, the way that the good majority of people diet is not high fat. It's low fat, and so when you say to someone, eat 100 grams of fat, they're like, oh my God, that is ridiculously high. Most people are trying to stay 50 or under. As an example, I will give you your grocery store, right? Go try and find full fat yogurt, and you will have to swim underneath all of the skim yogurt and all the skim milk and stuff like that. So people are conditioned to believe that fat is bad. Like I said, I think that that is something that is a contributor to many of the hormone issues that a lot of people experience as it relates to dieting. Because, for one, um, many vitamins are fat soluble, so you need fats in your diet to actually uptake and make use of the vitamins that you're eating in salads and fruits and all these different types of things, right? Um, but fats are also calorically dense. And so people are conditioned to believe that the only way to get lean is lower, 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 lower. Well, Janelle is asking the question. Janelle is actually one of the people that we've profiled, and she's had a lot of success. And one of the things with her success is that she's found that she's leaner at a higher weight, kind of similar to the recommendations that we were making for Whitney, because in Janelle's case, she's an extremely active person. Um, and so when she started adding some carbohydrates and lowering the fats a little bit, that's made a big difference. So now let's get to the carb part of the equation. But I don't want to get distracted. The fats part, the advantages are hormonal, vitamin uptake, but also calorically dense. When you're conditioned to believe that the only way to lose fat is to constantly go lower, 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 and lower, you're going to avoid fats, because for every gram of fat, it carries 9 calories, and so it's very calorically dense. What Janelle knows, what we all know, is that having those fats in your diet actually work to your advantage, because it actually keeps your calorie point higher, and it allows you to take advantage of that extra energy and workouts and things of this nature. The carbohydrate part of it is necessary because mostly protein turnover, but also in Metflex, Mike talks about carbohydrates stimulate insulin, and insulin's kind of got a bad rap, right? But it acts as a switch to indicate to your body that it's time to use carbohydrates for energy. And so if you're doing glycolytic training, like in Janelle's case, kettlebell training, or in the case of CrossFit, some type of WOD, having some carbohydrates pre-workout actually is a big advantage for you, right? Because it allows you to get more out of your training. So in the recommendation we were giving Whitney, to have more carbohydrates, maybe intra, work out a little bit less, things of this nature, or work out differently, I guess, not less, because I think that she's probably still going to be working out hard with the suggestions that we made. But the carbohydrate will then help with the protein turnover. That's one of the reasons why carbohydrates help with recovery. And so, one of the things that I've seen in literature is that when your glucose levels are full, your body's more inclined to grow more tissue. I actually think that that's representative of being at a higher calorie point. Certainly if you're eating 3,000 calories a day, your glycogen levels are probably going to be filled, and so therefore you're going to create new tissue, or at the very least maintain the tissue that you're earning while you're working out. And so the fat, this is sort of anecdotal, but I'm still going to put it out there. We've seen a lot of people that are paleo and are fat, and at certain times I've been relatively high fat in my diet as kind of experimentation. And in virtually all of those situations where people went very low carbohydrate um, and uh, and were trying to kind of lean out, they would lose a lot more muscle than the person that was keeping carbohydrates in their diet in some reasonable way. And usually is pretty dramatic, because basically what going low carb does is it sort of pulls all the hydration, not just out of your glucose level, your glucose or glycogen stores, but also from your muscles, because your muscles are majority water, right? And so if you're not rehydrating them with carbohydrate, it's kind of interesting when you talk about hydration. It's just such an interesting question. I mean, I could literally go on about it for hours, because people think, oh, I got dehydrated, I'm not drinking enough water. Well, you can drink a lot of water. I don't know if anybody's ever been low carb or whatever, but you tend to drink a lot of water. It kind of runs right through you, right? Whereas if you have carbohydrate, it actually soaks up into your muscle. You don't end up, urinating near as much. That's probably the easiest way to say that. Um, but there are two other factors in terms of hydration. It's not just water. It's some level of electrolytes, and it's some level of carbohydrate that allows better uptake into the muscle, and that's one of the reasons why we talk about what we talk about. And so I think there's a number of factors going on. I think your glucose levels are higher. I think your calorie point's higher. But certainly I've done it where I have kept my calories higher and just did fat, and in that instance I added fat. In similar calories where I was eating in a more balanced way and had carbohydrate, I saw much better results. I gained muscle in that instance, and I did not gain fat. And so I think that the calorie point being higher is definitely a factor in all of this, but I also believe that when you use it around your workouts, it allows for better workouts. And so you have added work capacity. That added work capacity goes from you having a 250-pound squat to a 350-pound squat. And the more resistance you have on your body, ultimately, the more you're asking your body to adapt to that resistance, and that's how it's going to create new tissue. And that's why, Janelle, at a higher weight, you are more lean, and you've seen that within body fat testing. And so I hope that answers your question. It's kind of in depth. I could go really in depth with it, because it's something that is kind of an interesting contrast, because both people have it wrong, right? The low-fat people, they're eating all these carbohydrates, and those carbohydrates tend to keep them full. They don't always eat protein, and they tend to focus on lower calorie. The fat people, they tend to get higher calorie because fats tend to be calorically dense, unless, of course, you're eating just a ton of fiber, and then it's just difficult to get your calorie point up. But they don't get that muscle protein turnover, and you don't see the best athletes in the gym eating like that, right? Usually the best athletes in the gym tend to be eating more carbohydrates, and they should probably up their fats. And so we kind of, as you know, preach for some level of moderation. So, April, I
think
covered
you
it.
covered everything. I think you covered
Yeah.
everything. The only thing I was going to address is, basically fats for, healthy hormone function and so forth. In my opinion, usually a very healthy range is half a gram to 0.75 per pound of body weight is a very healthy range. Like what you said, in some situations, if you are, if you've been fed for a long period of time and you're going to strictly focus on maintaining muscle and trying to drop body fat, I think you can safely go down usually around 50 grams, 0.3 grams per pound for a short period of time.
Like
Short.
one day. Like one day. I mean, if we're going to say that, we have to say it with what we mean. What we mean is one day, maybe a week, for 2 or 3 weeks, right? We're not talking about being at these uber low levels for long periods of time, because what people are going to hear when you say that, April, is they're going to go, oh my goodness, April's saying 50 grams, so I'm going to go 50 grams every day for 2 months, and I'm going to hope to lose a whole bunch of fat. And
But
that's just
I think
not.
and I would never recommend that for, I think it's dependent upon the person's size as well, because we have members who are, 100 pounds, and I think 50 grams of fat is adequate for them. It's
Yeah.
different. It's different upon someone's stats and size and, so forth. Me and Janelle have very similar stats, and, I find that trying to maintain a higher fat level, I basically just got fat on higher fat, basically lower carbs, higher fat. I got fat, but I think that when you're training to the, intensity that she's training and also to what I train, and you're trying to hit the higher carb levels, you know, trying to hit 300 plus grams of carbs a day and then trying to hit higher fat, I think you run into, usually women of our stats, they end up storing fat with the higher fat levels and the higher carb levels.
Well,
um,
and that's the other thing too. Everybody wants to have a discussion about fats and carbs, but what we really need to have a discussion on is calories, because the fats and carbs is an important part of it, and we're sort of trying to teach people how to eat with some level of balance, but it really is the calories that make a difference. Now, some people say, well, that sounds like calories in, calories out. No, it's very different than calories in, calories out, because this isn't Weight Watchers where we're saying, hey, eat nachos and beer, and as long as you eat 1,600, you're going to lose weight. Yeah, you might lose weight, but you're not going to maintain your muscle mass. So what we suggest is that you have to have at least an adequate amount of protein. The good majority of the time you should be eating to feed your workouts. Those calorie points in those days should be higher, and then on your workout or non-workout days, that's when you're going to kind of keep fat in check, or use it as a way of going lower. And I'm relatively certain we'll probably be able to cover that by the end of this. So we covered that. If Janelle has a follow-up, just let us know. Um, I don't know if I'm pronouncing this correctly or not, but Raleigh is asking, um, can you please review meal timing when training for fat loss? He's saying Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 5 a.m. CrossFit, for instance, when to follow control days eating versus workout days. I think I understand post-workout eating, its timing of carbs after post-workout. So basically for you, you're going to have your carbohydrates on Sunday night, Tuesday night, and then Friday night. Okay, then you're going to have post-workout carbohydrates for breakfast, and then I'll just give you your Monday meals would then be lunch, and dinner would be low-ish carbohydrate. Not super low carbohydrate, but low-ish carbohydrate. Um, so if you look at Wednesday, same thing, lunch and dinner. Um, Thursday is going to be the night that you have your carb ups for Friday. Friday similar. Um, Saturdays and Sundays are kind of interesting because you're not crossfitting on those days. Those days would also be kind of lowish carbohydrate, but a lot of people, that's where they sort of struggle. Maybe you don't struggle, but I'm going to go ahead and say this because I think it's going to be helpful for other people as well. What I would do in that situation, um, is I would have some level of low intensity work on, let's say, Saturday, right? So if for instance on Saturday you like to have a couple glasses of wine with your wife, it's a date night, things of this nature, make sure to get in like 30 to 45 minutes of walking. You can do around the neighborhood, you can do it at a local park, something of this nature. It's one of the things that a lot of people don't use, to kind of stay active when they're not CrossFitting. We sort of get into this mindset of, high intensity, high intensity, high intensity, but that low intensity still works. The problem with low intensity was when we were doing low intensity and we were all doing treadmills and stuff like that, um, we never did any high intensity. Now it's just the opposite. Now all we do is high intensity and we never do low intensity. And so true constantly varied would involve high intensity or low intensity as well. And so that's what I would suggest to you is on any of the days that you're not working out, there's no reason why you can't do a 45-minute walk or something like that. And I think that would be helpful for your fat loss goals. Now, once again, I'm not sure if you're following on Instagram, but one of the things that I think is a really big thing is I think that well, can you do me a favor, Raleigh, and give me your stats, and then that'll give me an indication on what your fat loss cycle might be. So if you know your body fat, that would be great. Height and weight will probably be fine. I already know that you work out 3 days a week. He's saying give me 2 seconds. Right now, just in an attempt to give him 2 seconds, I am losing 10 pounds over 10 weeks, so basically a pound a week. And this is how I suggest that people do it, or it's actually one of the ways that I suggest that people do it, is you go for a pound a week. And so for me, for Wednesday at noon, I try to hit my number. So currently I'm 3 weeks in. Might be 2 or 3 weeks. I can't remember. But every day I weigh myself in the morning and I take a picture of it and post it on Instagram, which, I have to say, I don't mind doing this because I think you don't ever see like diet authors ever do this stuff, and I think it's helpful for people. I think it's helpful to know like what this looks like. I think it's helpful for you guys to know that today, it's not pizza. It's pretty low carb, actually kind of lean, trying to mobilize some fat to kind of get to my number, which is 176. So Raleigh's saying he's 5'11", he's 225. Okay, so at 225, you're going to be on the same plan. You're trying to lose 1 pound every week. So Wednesday might be your day, right? And so Wednesday morning, like next Wednesday morning, you want to be at 224. And so I'll give you an example of why this week has been a challenge, and much more of a challenge than the other weeks. And I talked about it a little bit before. One, it's the end of summer. So, I've been hit with everything, every single thing. We also have a new book out, right? So all the things that everybody bitches about all the time, that this is why I can't stick to my diet. Okay, here's what's happened to me. We put out a new book. That's stressful. Trust me, it's really stressful. Family reunion, state fair, date weekend, date night, all these different things that come up. And, I've been trying to manage these and, on the one hand, kind of show people how you can eat flexibly, but also show that I like at your weight, your height, things of this nature, honestly, a pound a week should not be that hard. But what happens with people is they start to get this mindset of, gosh, I'd like to pull off the Band-Aid as quickly as possible. And so they start to eat paleo or some type of way that's really super restrictive, and it doesn't really help them kind of reach goals. Then they go, well, I'm a lot better at CrossFit. Yeah, that's great, and that's awesome. That's a good thing, right? But most of us did not join CrossFit to get better at CrossFit. We went for it for a result, and a lot of people aren't seeing those results, and that's why our site's gotten so popular really quickly. He says he's CrossFitted for 4.5 years. He says Tuesdays and Thursdays Krav Maga at 6 a.m. I don't know what that is, unfortunately. Um, I've eaten paleo. Do you know what that is,
Yeah, I
April?
think it's the type of martial arts.
Okay. Martial arts. Okay, that's good. I've eaten paleo for 4.5 years, very strict Sunday through Friday, about starchy carbs, basically none. Saturday after lunch, I may blow it out. I drink a couple beers or martinis 4 times a week on average. Well, we just found what you're struggling with, and one of the reasons why you're struggling. Let me give you an example. We had, because you're virtually the same as this guy. He was a marathoner, and what you're referring to is similar type of activity level. When you keep See, what you're choosing is you're keeping starchy carbs out so you can keep the beers and martinis in, right? At some point, I probably have you pick the martinis over. I can't remember what's the thing that Rob Wolf always talks about. It's agave. It's like the tequila. What's is
Oh,
that?
it's the
That's a margarita.
yes, the margarita.
NorCal margaritas. There you go. That's what it is. Um, what I always suggest to people in your situation is one, if you've been eating paleo, intuitively your protein's probably low. I don't know how religious you are about drinking protein, but my guess is you would want to make sure that those levels are correct. The other thing is I would have you get away from the beers and go to more like NorCal margaritas, where there's no other way to say this, but clear liquors or darker liquors that do the job fast, that's what we want, right? And I know that a lot of people just enjoy the relaxation of drinking a beer or something of this nature. They're not in it to get drunk. They're not in it to like lose all their faculties. Um, so, what I would do in that situation is just sort of change the amount of the margarita, not necessarily, martini. What's the main ingredient in a martini? By the way, I haven't had a drink
Yeah,
in 30
I'm
years.
I'm
So.
I'm actually whenever I do drink a couple times a year, I'm more of a vodka drinker, and that's what's in a
Yeah.
martini.
Well, he's saying gin, and gin is fine. It's a clear liquor. The problem with martinis, though, is I mean I know that they're strong, um, but there's not a lot of volume, you know, and so if you were looking at fat loss, I might look at something like margaritas because if you're enjoying beer, you're probably looking for the volume and sort of the social experience, and so that might be a way to get um, a little bit more of that in.
I would just
Um,
make sure if you are just adding if you are doing the margaritas to make sure you are doing the healthier version, the agave and the lime is basically what I think it's made with. Because if you're going out full blown margarita, those are like 500-600 calorie pops a piece. So
Yeah, yeah. So you want to keep the calorie point low. That's what your issue is, man, is that the things that you're drinking have a lot of calories in them, And so if you can kind of keep the calories away from, that, what I think you're going to see is that your activity levels will just skyrocket, because you're adding the starches, and when the starches are added and the calories are lowered from the alcohol, I think that'll make a big difference for you. But what I would suggest for you is make sure that you get in the science lab, kind of walk through this with people because we have a number of people in a very similar situation to yours, and you know I would walk through that a little bit and try what we're suggesting, and then come back in a week or so and say, well, this doesn't feel right. April, James, what do you guys think we should tweak, and then kind of go from there. So let me know if that doesn't help or if you have any follow-ups, but I'm going to try and move on through a few of these other questions here. Um, are I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce this. If it's Ariana guy or Arian guy. She said body fat tested with calipers a few weeks ago, but I'm not convinced the result was correct. There is a lot of subjectivity with calipers, and so that is something that I would be a little bit more um, find questionable than say something like bod pod or DEXA scan, as I believe I have more body fat than it is calculated. Sometimes people believe that, but no, it's not always correct. So in my total daily energy expenditure, I didn't use my body fat number. That's fine. In some, I would like to figure out if my macros are okay so that I can put together my schedule and start ETP. Well, the easiest way to do that is to just go into the forum and ask one of the moderators to do that for you, and they will happily do it. And so, um, yeah, I don't you don't necessarily need your body fat to do that, but I would also go into a little bit of your history so they can kind of know, are you coming from an undereating background? What's your weight? What's your level of activity? The more information, the better. By the way, anybody that is kind of new to this and trying to get into the science lab, make sure when you add your profile to the science lab that you add your stats and you add your MyFitnessPal link and things of this nature. The more information you can put into that, the better it is and the easier it is for the moderators to really help you long term. And then, we can often look back and go, okay, well, this is, you know, what their history was 3 months ago, and then they got a body fat test, and then you just add that, and so it just kind of makes it kind of easier. But yeah, somebody can help you walk through that in the forums. So if you have any follow-ups, let me know. Otherwise, just check with one of the moderators, and you should be good. Mary is saying she was recently diagnosed with hyperthyroidism. My symptoms included having heart palpitations during the warm-ups, feeling nauseous and just tired. Even taking my son in his car seat tires me out. I've also lost 22 pounds in the last 3 weeks. That's really fast. My question is, how do I avoid the loss of my strength gains? You cannot avoid the loss of your strength gains. You're probably destroying your muscle, um, losing weight that fast. Um, what about my calorie intake? I went from 167 to 145. I was at 225 calories. I weigh 145, 5'1", 5'1". Any exercise recommendation as well? Well, I'd be interested to know if you CrossFit, how often you work out. Um, it seems like you probably work out a lot if you're saying that you lost 22 pounds um, eating a 2,225 calorie diet. So I'd be interested to know about that. But let's see. She did have some follow-ups. I would still like to lift weight, but even at warm-ups, my heart rate shoots up 182. Advice suggestions, thank you in advance. I actually was diagnosed hypothyroidism, which is the opposite of what you are. Um, I don't think April and I would really feel comfortable. We're not doctors giving you any suggestions. It might be helpful to get some thoughts related to other people. I'm sure that there's, out of the, you know, over 10,000 people in the forum, somebody has similar symptoms to you, and so you could ask them that. You could also message Dr. Spencer. He can't treat you as a patient over the line, but he can give you some ideas and then also give you some suggestions on questions you might ask your physician. She says she was very active before this, 3 to 4 days of CrossFit, 2 to 3 days of Oli lifting. So that sounds like why your weight loss was so extreme. Um, are you saying, what I need to know is I mean, is it possible that hyperthyroidism would cause like
Yeah.
super?
Yes, I was actually going to say my sister-in-law was going through this a couple months back, about 6 months ago. She was very tired, and she had the exact same similar thing and kept going back to doctors. And come to find out, she had the hyperthyroidism, and she lost a large amount of weight pretty quickly within the course of a month or two before the doctors actually were able to diagnose and get her on the proper medication, because they had started her on one medication and it wasn't working, and so forth, and so she had to keep going back to the doctor to get the proper medication before she stopped, and she doesn't really even work out, so.
Yeah. Well, I would definitely look at lifting as one way, to. Um, I think when you lose that amount of weight, it's obviously a symptom of something, and clearly in this instance, it appears that it's probably a symptom of the hyperthyroidism. Um, that's probably not great for your muscle, honestly. Um, the I'd be interested to know if your 2,225 calorie diet was that consistent throughout this period. Um, but ultimately, I think this is going to come down to, we're not doctors, and
Yeah.
neither one of us have hyperthyroidism, so we can't speak on it personally. But that is one of the advantages of the forums. A lot of people will have that, and it'd be interesting if your weight becomes. I don't know what your thoughts are, Mary, but a lot of people would be overjoyed with losing 22 pounds. Um, that would not be my reaction. My reaction is that if I lost 22 pounds in 3 months, it would be really bad, um, because that weight loss that quick is going to probably. I mean, you're probably already seeing it hurt your strength numbers and things of this nature, unless your strength numbers actually aren't that high, or you're relatively new to CrossFit. How long have you been doing CrossFit? That might, you know, be one of the symptoms of your issue. Oh, 3 years. So, yeah, I mean, this is going to be something that you're going to want to work with your doctor. I would go ahead and ask for opinions within the forum. I would go ahead and ask Mike T. Nelson, Spencer, message those guys. They may be able to give you some insights. Um, I have to be honest with you, I cannot speak intelligently on this one and wouldn't want to either way. um, just because I don't think that that's where my level of expertise is, and I did not stay at a Holiday Inn Express last night. Um, so I hope that that is okay by you, but I just wouldn't want to give you bad information. The last question that we have is from Brandy. She said, this is exactly what happened to me when I tried to go higher fat and lower carb, lost muscle, and gained body fat. So she was just commenting with Janelle. I think the problem, though, is that people then go, okay, when I'm higher fat, lower carb, I don't gain muscle, so now I'm going to go higher carb, lower fat. It's like, no, we're not saying that either. There needs to be like some moderation in no matter how you look at it, right? And so that is the main suggestion that we have for people, is to keep an adequate amount of fats in. I hope that it's kind of interesting, because the Instagram, people are nicer on Instagram than they are on Facebook for some reason. And so I'm not sure that I'm getting like a real accurate, the way people are thinking about it, or the majority of the people that are thinking about it would like to eat cookies at the state fair, so they kind of like the idea of what we're doing. In general, though, the way that I eat probably 2 or 3 weeks ago with Instagram was probably more the way that I eat normally. This last couple weeks has just been a little difficult with the way that summer has ended, and I knew this was going to happen all along. It wasn't like it was lost on me that everybody is going to want a barbecue at the end of summer, right? And here at the Minnesota State Fair, it's kind of a big deal. Actually, April, it's such a shame. April's going to be here in Minnesota for the Granite Games. You're going to miss out on the State Fair, which you would have loved the State Fair. The state fair is like the ultimate kitschy Minnesota thing, and it is totally awesome. you know, like you know, it's so very Minnesotan, and it really is kind of a fun thing to be a part of. Mary did respond back, and she said thank you. She understands. I will say this, Mary. I mean, the reason why we did hire Spencer, and the reason why we have Michael and staff, is so those guys can answer your questions, so you can message them in the forums. Um, well, April, it's 8 o'clock. I do actually need to get out of here. Is there anything that you wanted to comment on as we close the webinar?
No, just basically like what you said, just get in contact with us in the forum. The one lady that needed help with her macros, just create a new post, and majority of the time people will get a response within 5 or 10 minutes. It's lots of detail and lots of answers and stuff you can get there, and help in general. And even the seasoned members who have been doing Eat to Perform for a year and a half or so, they're actually a big help and can kind of tell you what works for them and what doesn't, and good food combinations, recipes, all kinds of good stuff in there.
We haven't really put it out there, but Your Diet Sucks came out this week, and the full title is Your Diet Sucks: The Eat to Perform Guide to Undieting, Flexible Eating, and Sustainable Fat Loss. And that's actually a book that April, myself, Spencer, Dr. Spencer Nadolski, and James Barnum wrote together. Are we getting a lot of feedback? Probably not a lot of people have read it yet, right? I mean, it's only been a couple.
Not yet. I've actually gotten a couple of messages, mostly on Facebook, from some of the Eat to Perform people who, said that they saw the new ebook and was, wondering if it would be something that would be useful, and that type of thing. So I've been getting a lot of inquiries that way.
I do think it's helpful. I mean, it's a different kind of ebook for what we do, right? And everything that we've done up to this point, metabolic flexibility sort of lays the groundwork. The meal planning guide kind of plays off of metabolic flexibility, and then Your Diet Sucks really sort of incorporates just pretty much any way that you would like to eat that makes sense for you and your goals, right? And so we talk about, many of the strategies in that regard, and I'm really proud of it. It's April's first turn as an author, and so that was really fun. There were parts of the book that are interesting, and I think we're sort of editing it as we go. It's not wrong, but it looks like one person is talking, but in fact it's four people talking. We've sort of melded all that together, and so
I think in comparison to the other books, I think it's easier to read.
Yeah.
I have a lot of people, new members, that will join the forum, and they're like, "Oh, I got Netflix, but I haven't read it. It's too sciencey. I don't understand it." I think it will be easier, to read in general. I think Netflix is easy to read, but I think when you add some of the sciencey stuff, some people, whenever they start seeing that, they just, kind of shut down and don't really understand, some of the terms.
Yeah. I hear you when you say that, but I'm going to tell you right now, Mike Nelson, for a scientist, does not talk like a scientist. He's the one guy that I can actually read and enjoy what he's reading. A lot of these other guys, just like gobbledygook, and a lot of times even in the ebooks that people are writing, they feel like imprisoned by citations.
I totally agree. Totally. His stuff. I actually
like,
read one of his older articles that he had done. I think it was last year, and it was great. Like what you said, it's very easy to read. It's not, because some of those articles, like Lyle's stuff, his stuff is great, but you just almost fall asleep after 4 or 5 paragraphs. You just can't.
I mean, I love Lyle's stuff. It's really smart. We're referring to Lyle McDonald. He's a great, nutritionist, kind of not a great human being, but as long as you don't, try to get to know him personally, I think you'll be fine. But long story short, a lot of these guys, they get way too into the technicalities of it, and they don't break it down to the easy part, to what people really need. And a lot of people say that I write the way that I talk. I think April writes similar to the way that she talks, and so it allows for like a communication style that I think comes off pretty good on paper. And I'm really proud of that book. I think that really sort of represents what I've wanted out there for a long time, and I think people are going to really like it once more people see it and there's more conversation generated related to it. So anyway, I appreciate everybody being here. We're going to say goodbye. April, you want to say goodbye to everybody?
Good night, everybody.
Alrighty. We'll see you guys in the forum. Also, if you can't make these webinars, you can just check the forums and we always make them available. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.